All right, have some technical difficulties. We're alive. This is the Battle of Mogadishu. Some of you may know as Black Hawk Down, or the official name of Operation Gothic Serpent. October 3rd through the 4th, 1993. Presented by Kojak, that's I. I'm the Tactical Game and Ghost Recon Division Officer. I have assembled a small, short lesson on the events that transpired during the battle, leading up to the battle, and post-battle.
Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, was a port city in East Africa which most couldn't point out on a map or even have thought of until 1992 during the UN humanitarian campaign.
After October 4th, 1993, Mogadishu would become well known to the world, and especially the United States. Not known for reasons such as tourism or natural resources, but rather for a tragic battle that resulted in 18 American soldiers dead and 73 wounded, along with hundreds of Somalians dead and thousands wounded. This is the Battle of Mogadishu. Leading up to the battle, backstory on Somalia, it was a colony of Italy and Great Britain up until 1960. In 1969, dictator Said Barry came in to power, and that lasted. He came in as self-proclaimed socialist, trying to create a socialist republic. It's more of a dictatorship. This led to a lot of clans being formed. All those clans might be, one block away. They might be warring clans, and one block away you might, make allies with that other clan. Clans were largely families, friends, neighborhoods. No real structure, but amazingly there was more structure than it seems like there would be. 1991, Civil War began. Barry was forced out of Mogadishu in 91. That's when we get to see General Adid come into play with his SNM, Somali National Movement. Other factions, everyone's vying for power. Everyone's trying to get control of the city, control of the weapons, control of the drugs, and control of the people. Clan fighting led to lawlessness, starvation. About 300,000 Somalis died of starvation just during that year due to that. There's a picture of General Adid. 1992, they signed a ceasefire with the UN coming in for helping. In April of 92, UN military observers were sent to Somalia, and by August, UNISOM 1, United Nations Operation in Somalia, started a humanitarian relief called Operation Provide Relief. George Bush launched his intervention into Somalia as the clans were stealing the food. I mean, they had warehouses of food stockpiled. Clans were stealing the food, trading it for drugs, trading it for weapons, and basically using famine and food as a power to influence people to join with them. So George W. Bush decides to send the Marines in. The Marines went in Somalia to help as much as they could. There's George Bush on your left. The Marines went into Somalia to help as much as they could to distribute the food, search the areas, make sure any weapons that were said to be there weren't there, to dismantle his technical fleet, any explosives he had to bring a little bit of law. But as soon as the Marines left or would leave, go back to base for the night, it would be back to a lawless night of Somalia's warlords, clans stealing food, fighting. The Marines and a SEAL unit deployed, and as soon as they hit the beach, they were met by heavy resistance by camera crews. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, BBC knew somehow the Marines were coming. They met them on the beach. So what was supposed to be like kind of a nighttime infill was met by flashlights, cameras, and video. So not really the best entrance, but let it be known and let the world know about it a little bit more. Now, Bush was in his last few months of his presidency, and let it be known that this is just security for Operation Restore Hope. The United States being the ones who have the greatest military. Some of you might disagree with that, but I'm not gonna listen to you about that one. But send the military in, have them try to control peace, have them try to control the food supplies. Clinton was on the way in January of '93, and towards the end of Bush's presidency and Clinton's, they wanted to scale down the amount of presence in Somalia now because more Marines were shipped over. They wanted to downscale it as not to cause any type of global warning or war, as we had other things going on, such as just getting out of Iraq and Kuwait. So the UN, we decided let them kind of take over a little bit with their nation building. So they formed UNISOM 2. A little bit more power, and they stressed the crucial importance of disarmament of the Somali people. Somalis had a lot of weapons. It's basically, if you think, if you ever heard, like, if you're born in Texas, as soon as you're born, you're handed a gun. Pretty much Somalia, as soon as you're born, you're handed either an AK or an RPG. There's a lot of weapons. That's where the food comes in of trading weapons. A lot of these weapons did come from Somalia was Soviet-backed at the beginning. There were a few Soviet tanks
that were put out of operation before the battle, luckily. A lot of AKs, a lot of Russian-style weapons, RPGs,
RPG-7s, AK-47s, probably a couple of G3, maybe G3A3, and somehow there was a few American weapons too, such as the M16, the M4, based on that platform. Soviet-backed Somalia until they decided to try to invade Ethiopia, in which case the Soviet Union, which was collapsing at that time, backed Ethiopia and drove a deed back to Somalia without support, leading to a lot of guns, a lot of weapons, with pretty much do whatever the hell you want attitude of these warlords and clan leaders. UNISOM 2 tried to come in, do some nation building, and if people don't want it, they're not going to do it. So basically, no one wants to be told what to do if you're one of the warlords or one of the higher clans, and you can do whatever you want. Pakistani forces were there, Malaysian forces were there. They were set up in an old soccer stadium to the north of town. And in June of '93, Pakistani troops were looking at a weapons storage site and also kind of looking for a deed. They were ambushed and massacred, And when Somalis ambush and massacre, it's not just shoot them or leave their bodies or no, it's basically their ambush and massacre was shooting, machetes, axes, knives, and basically they dismembered uh, all the Pakistani troops that were in there. Here's a picture of the Marines going in, looking for weapons shortly after the Pakistani troops were dismembered, um, killed in a very, very savage way. The Somalians were very savage, and it was heard that the men were savage, but when it came to dismemberment, the women were even more savage. Uh, Adid was not specifically named as the head of who did that, but everything wanted to be pointed towards him. They offered a $25,000 reward, leading to his apprehension. June 8th, Admiral Howe decided to request special forces to head to Somalia and see if they could somehow capture or kill Adid. Now, as these requests were going through, an American helicopter, Cobra helicopter, actually attacked a house in South Mogadishu where a group of clan leaders were meeting, destroyed the buildings with tow missile, cannon fire, and killed a number of them. Four Western journalists had gone to investigate what happened, and they were beaten to death by an angry mob. Once again, the savage brutality of Somalians during this time period. After that, end of July, Adid was last time Adid was seen. He would use body doubles. He would use disguises. He would use different vehicles. He would switch vehicles if he needed. He would switch vehicles throughout. He would move at night. Anything he could do to conceal his movement and his location. 4 American MPs were killed by a remote detonated landmine set off by the Somalians, and 2 weeks later, 6 more soldiers were wounded in a similar attack. Now, this started getting the attention of America. The special forces that were requested, they came up with 3 packages. The packages they chose was the one with the least amount of troops, least amount of vehicles. They cut the AC-130 gunship, which would be a major dispute throughout the post-battle. Their idea was to send in Task Force Ranger, send in Delta operators, and send in some other special forces, SEAL, and a couple of the parajumpers. Now, as the movie showed, if you've seen the movie, they were all there, but before this had all happened, U.S. Army 10th Mountain Division was already there, already doing patrols, already engaging in battles. So, since UNISOM, United Nations, weren't working, they had some vehicles, just wasn't really working. Special forces come in, and they fly into Mogadishu. They bring Blackhawks, they bring Little Birds, and they bring the whole excuse me, they bring the whole well, not a lot of people actually, I guess, but they do bring a lot of the Rangers. Hold on, sorry about this, I lost my note. Bravo Company 3rd Ranger Battalion, 7th 75th Ranger Regiment, C Squadron, 1st Special Force Operational Detachment Delta, which would be Delta Force, 1st Battalion, 160th SOAR, Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, with the MH-6Js, AH-6 Little Birds, and MH-60 Blackhawks. Combat Controllers and Pararescue Men from 24 Special Tactics Squadron, Navy SEALs. They also had the USS Abraham Lincoln stationed off shore, Amphibious Squadron 5. Task Force 10th Mountain Division, including 2nd Battalion,
25th Aviation Regiment, 1st Battalion, 22nd Infantry Regiment, 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Platoon C Company, 1st Battalion, 87th Infantry Regiment,
41st Engineer Battalion, 10th Mountain Division, 15th Battalion of Frontier Force Regiment, Pakistani Army, 19th Lancers, Pakistani Army, 10th Battalion, Pakistani Army, and 977th Military Police Company. They also had the United Nations operations, which include 19th Battalion of Royal Malay Regiment, Malaysian Army, 11th Regiment, the Malaysian Army, and the 7th Battalion Frontier Force Regiment, Pakistani Army. So, a lot of people were brought in. As far as strength, it was initially 160 in the Task Force Ranger, 19 aircrafts, 16 helicopters, 9 utility vehicles, 3 heavy trucks. Somali had Muhammad Farah Adid and estimates 2,000 to 4,000 fighters, Adid's, quote unquote soldiers. There's no, it could have been 500, it could have been 50,000. There's no real hard numbers, but guesstimates are 2,000 to 4,000 roughly. Casualties and losses also, once again, we'll get in that towards the end, but not an exact number on those, except for United States numbers. So Task Force Ranger arrives August 22nd, 1993. 160 elite troops consisted of Army Rangers, Delta Force operators, commanded by General William Garrison. On September 21st, the task force was able to capture Adid's advisor, Osman Ali Atto. This was a big capture, as it really got the attention of Adid, and it kind of helped Adid by saying, "Hey, they're out for me. I should really be a little more careful." Otto was seen in the movie Black Hawk Down, driving through a desert. One of the Delta operators put a sniper round through the engine block, and the car stops. Once again, we're going to be going through some Hollywood versus real life. Hollywood, that happened. Real life, they landed. It was in a convoy. They landed the birds and shot the car up. Anywhere from 30 to 50 bullet holes in the car. The driver got out with a gun, went to fire, and they immediately dropped him. And then they captured Otto and a few of his bodyguards. So that's one difference between the movie and real life reports. There is Task Force Ranger, 160 of them. The Delta operators were, and there they are returning from one of their missions. Real quick, they did not fly or go and ground one mission. They did 6 missions before the final, battle of Mogadishu, before the Blackhawks went down. Actually, before the second and third Blackhawk went down. They would go in every night on ground and exfil by ground. Go in by air, exfil by air. Go in by air, exfil by ground. Go in by ground, exfil by air. Every night they would go in and they would do something different. That kept the Somalis on their toes of well, they're coming in this way. How are they leaving? What are they doing? Are they actually searching? Are they just patrolling? And they just wanted, kind of let their presence be known and get the alert level up to the Somalis, but kind of also not know when they're going to strike. There's Black Hawk pilots. As you can see on the right, the pilots carried MP5s. That was their basically backup weapon. MP5, German-made HK gun, very reliable, but we'll find out later they weren't as reliable as they should be. Well, that also goes towards weapons maintenance also. So the first Black Hawk that went down was not the one you think of on October 3rd. The first Black Hawk actually went down in September. But that pretty much went largely unknown to the world. I'm not sure, if you're old enough to remember. At the time, I was 16 or 17, so I would have been 17 at the time. I don't remember that happening. Once again, though, when you're 17, you're not really. A lot of people aren't really worried about world issues, except what's in front of you. So after the one was shot down, it was kind of a, hey, we're not invincible in these anymore. But you know what? That was another American helicopter shot down that came out of the 10th Mountain Division. 160th. They kind of thought, we have better training. It's not going to happen to us. That was just, we trained for this. If it does happen, we have, we know what we're doing. And these guys are, the best of the best pilots. They train day, night, flying. They train crashes. They've actually crashed helicopters on purpose to see what's going to survive, who can survive, and send in the CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue.
Gives them practice also. So yeah, intentionally crashing helicopters. Not all the time. They are expensive. There's your tax dollars. But they will train and do that.
So, as they're looking for a deed, they're trying to get some informants from Somalia, hire them. There was also CIA in there that was helping. There was a lot of people in Somalia from the United States that people don't know about, or it's very sketchy if they were actually there, or the direct involvement, or kind of muddying the facts that they were there. But said that CIA operatives were there with the ground branch. Ground branch of the CIA is pretty intense special operations unit. If you want to look it up, they do some pretty covert stuff that I'm sure that you're not going to find a whole lot of high detail of what they actually did and where, but just like any special forces group. So CIA's in there. They're getting informants to help them. However, with the informants, everybody that they get, you never know how far a deed reaches to them. Are they with a deed? Are they spies? Are they saying, we'll help you, and giving a deed and other warlords info on, when you're coming and stuff? And a lot of times it seemed to have happened. They had devised a plan where they would have a radio transmitter set into the head of a cane that is very ornament and elaborate, and given by one warlord to a deed as a present, hoping a deed would carry this cane around, not near a transmitter, and they could transmit it. Before it happened, the informant with the cane was supposed to meet with the deed. The night before, well, he lost a game of Russian roulette. So he pretty much blew his head off, and that kind of canceled anything with him doing anything. So they hired another person to get the cane to him, and more issues. The cane never arrived to him. The informants just weren't reliable. The one informant, if you've seen the movie, the one informant they did get to drive the car and put a big X on it, didn't really happen as it did in the movie, but we'll get to that in a second. So as the intelligence is coming in, a lot of fake takeoffs, birds are spun up, people are putting their gear on, running to it, and mission scrubbed. Just not enough credible information, or someone said they saw a deed walking into a building. They went in the building. There's no one in there. They went into another building. It was right next door to it. They found the guy. They said it was a deed who looked nothing like him. So the intelligence was kind of rough back then. But finally, they did get some credible intelligence. They had air surveillance. They had people on the ground, and they got the intelligence that a lot of his top leaders were going to be meeting. Now, this was not actually meant to capture D. Well, it was meant to capture or kill a D, but this mission was not actually meant. They didn't think they were actually going to find him there. So, mission was to capture or kill, but the main mission was to get his advisors. If he was there, bonus. So, Delta Force was going to go in. They were going to load up Rangers. They had four helicopters. Chalk 1, Chalk 2, Chalk 3, Chalk 4. The Chalk designation came from old World War II, where they would put the number on the plane, and once you briefed, you ran to that number. Here is from Paul Leonard, one of the operators, a picture of the Delta Force F Squad. These guys were going to go in, have Rangers set up a 4-point blocking position on all four corners of the building where they knew the advisors were going to be. Delta Force goes in, secures them, ground convoy comes, picks them up, they go back home. 30-40 minutes later, you're back home, back at the base playing volleyball on the beach. They got the call to go on October 3rd at 1350. They received the information, and at 1350, information received. Everyone's getting ready. Birds are spinning up. Convoy's loading up. They're heading in. At 1449, the Haberdasher clan leaders, located at a residence in central Mogadishu. 1532, the official force launched. 19 aircraft, 12 vehicles, and 160 men heading in at 1532. At 1542, the assault begins with Delta soldiers hitting a target house. 4 Ranger Chalk fast rope in. So this is Jerry Izzo from Black Hawk Super 6-4, I believe, looking back as they're flying in. Here is the mission time and everything. All right, you'll see objective: capture small and clan leaders. Assault, who it consisted of, and the mission time 3:35. So Little Birds, Delta operators flew in at Little Birds. Yeah, Little Birds were a lot more nimble, a lot smaller, and decided after the battle, Little Birds were the preferred urban combat vehicle in the air. So they land, hit the Delta lands in. hits the target's buildings. Chalk 1, 2, 3, 4. The Blackhawks, they move in, secure all 4 positions.
As you've probably seen in the movie, when they were fast roping in, they came under immediate fire as soon as they got in there. Not too much at the beginning,
but as it went on more, and as you've seen in the movie, PFC Blackburn missed the rope and fell about 70 feet to the ground. There's still no real reason. It said an RPG came, and the pilot pulled up to avoid it. Said they're taking fire, and the pilot jerked the stick. Said it was just a brownout, and he just missed a grab, or maybe stumbled. Because when you fast rope, you basically fall to the rope. You fall towards the rope, grab it, and slide down. Maybe he stumbled. There's no real hard evidence of any of that, because everything going on. But 70 feet down, fractured skull, broken bones, and in very bad shape. By the time they fast forward down to him, there was a Delta medic already working on him, and he was bleeding from his head, mouth, and bad shape. Load him up on a stretcher, get him to the Humvee and the convoy to get him back to base for immediate medical attention. 5 minutes later, large crowds of Somalians begin converging on the target area. So now you have a man wounded in critical condition, Somalis moving in, and you're trying to get captives onto the convoy and then get the convoy out. Now, back then there was no GPS, so you had a perhaps roughly drawn map. Maybe you had gone on patrol and seen it. Jeff Strucker, he was in the convoy. He was the navigator. He kind of knew his way, but even though it looks like it's laid out as a grid, there's a lot of streets and alleys that are too narrow for a convoy to get down, for vehicles to get down. Roadblocks were set up that might have been set up that day, might have been set up before when clans were fighting. And these roadblocks weren't like roadblocks you see here, maybe like a couple of traffic cones. These were whatever you can find. Tires, scrap wood, scrap metal, old pieces of vehicles, dead animal carcasses, whatever you could throw as a roadblock that you could block everything off of. I had done a Go Ruck event about, I want to say 3 years ago in Pittsburgh, and we had a guest speaker, it was Jason Moore, who was a RTO. And when he fast roped down, he couldn't figure out why his radio wasn't working. He couldn't contact the birds above. Couldn't contact really anybody within within any distance. He had showed us his radio pouch, and there's a hole in about the size of a finger you could fit through. This hole was from a AK round that hit his radio pack, severed the internal antenna. He didn't realize that until he got back to base. Took it to get repaired. They just kind of looked down like, oh, as he said, they looked at me and said, oh, dumb ranger, just doesn't know how to work his equipment. I turned to walk away. They called me back, and he said, you need to see this. And when they showed it to me, my face turns white as a ghost. That's the story he recalled to me. And what it was the hole was where an AK round hit and missed his head about 2 inches to the left and about 2 inches high. So within that 2 inches left and 2 inches high, he could have got hit chest or head. He told me that's when he realized inches mean lives. Definitely in the heat of the battle, he said he didn't feel it. Didn't realize it was hit. There's stuff going on around. It's a total brownout from the rotor wash. Everyone's running to get there. And a lot of these people, first time they're in combat. Young Rangers, just supposed to be setting up security, and all of a sudden they're taking fire. Stuff's going bad. Um, Somalis converging on all the targets, attacking the convoy, RPGs, AKs. I mean, they even had RPKs. As the convoy's heading down, three vehicles were detached to take Blackburn back, and this is when the first American casualty of the day comes in. It was Sergeant Dominic Pilla. He was on the 50, and he got hit. And when he got hit, I believe it was Struger got on a radio and started yelling, "Pilla's dead. Pilla's hit. Pilla's dead." And about 30 seconds, there's radio silence. If you listen to the radios, there was crosstalk, a lot of confusion, a lot of excitement. As soon as he said that, there was about 30 seconds where no one talked. He did get a little chewed out by a CO because you're supposed to use call signs and numbers rather than real names during the battle. But during that battle, with the intensity and the newness of this, and the reality that you can get killed, we will get killed. Um, kind of lose your head, and all sometimes your logic until you gotta kind of calm down a little bit. That's what he said. And so he's moving now. They got wounded Blackburn. You got Dominic Pillock killed. Confusion of the convoy. Once, as I said, there's no GPS or maps. The helicopters, the AH-6 Little Birds above, and MH-6, they were the ones trying to guide them. Well, they're above you looking down. They can see the street. They can see the grid, but they can't see exactly. Maybe there's something in the road.
Maybe it's too narrow. And as they're telling you to take a right, take a left, take a right, you might have already passed that because of the delay of them, and you're trying to get the hell out of that area.
So there's confusion of where they're going. Delta is waiting for the convoy to signal them where to go. The convoy is waiting for Delta to signal them to go. At 16:15, the prisoners were finally loaded after Delta team moved the prisoners to the trucks. So, okay, a little bit of confusion. We're heading back. We got this. We're going now. 16:20, first helicopter crash. Blackhawk Super 6-1 hit by an RPG and crash lands roughly 5 blocks northeast of the target building. Delta snipers, Staff Sergeant Daniel Bush and Sergeant Jim Smith survived the crash, beginning to defend the crash site. Now, I did not include the video, but there is a video you can look up from 60 Minutes, I believe. They show there's not a lot of footage from this battle, even though this battle was the first battle that they were filming that was broadcasted back to General Garrison and everybody at the Task Force Ranger HQ. Task Force Ranger HQ was at the Mogadishu airport in a hangar that was not the best condition, or leaks in the roof, rats, and every day since they got there, I know I'm backtracking here a little bit, but every day since they got there, the Somalis launched mortars at the airport. They didn't really hit anything or do anything. Like, someone might have been wounded a little bit, but nothing major. Maybe a scratch. It's just a scratch. But they tried. Somalis tried mortaring the base at this, where they had their Task Force Ranger HQ. Nothing really happened. So they're broadcasting this video directly to General Garrison and all of his staff. This is the first time this ever happened where people in the command center could see the battle. remotely. Nowadays, it's you watch the battle when you're watching TV. CNN, Fox, morning news, Good Morning America. They show you the battle on television. This was the first time, not on television, but the first time they had the capability to transmit the video back, and there was a slight delay. Not horrible, but it's 1993. Technology advanced a lot in the last 27 years. But as they're watching it, they realize, it's starting to get bad. Stuff's going bad. And that is when this video from 60 Minutes I was talking about, it's pretty grainy, but it shows you the Black Hawk, shows you in fast roping, and then it shows you the Black Hawk get hit. Got hit in a tail rotor, started spinning in circles, and then you see it crash. You will see like a black figure, which was Daniel Bush, standing by it, looking like he's looking around a corner to defend off Somalians. And unfortunately, he was killed moments after that video. And you will see others running towards that position, which might have been CSAR, might have been ground forces. CSAR is combat search and rescue. So the first crash goes down, first helicopter goes down at 16:20. 2 minutes later, crowds of armed Somalis are running towards it. And as they're running towards it, and about 5 minutes later, Humvee's moving, prisoners loaded up, and that's when Black Hawk Super 6-4, piloted by Michael Durant, he takes the place of Black Hawk 6-1, circling over the city. They all had their own circle, hold patterns. So he takes that position, and that's it. 1628, the CSAR tries to rope in to the crash of a Super 6-1 and secure position, get recovered bodies and any survivors. As they're roping in, they're getting shot at. So by the time it was done, you have 19 wounded in one area, and not counting the ones that were killed. So now you have 19 wounded. I talked to John Bellman, did a small interview with him. His position was to get in the building, set up a CCP, and guard the southern end. Move the casualties in, and start doing medical treatment on them. They had a couple of the parajumpers with them who were very, very helpful. One of them was injured, but is crawling on top of the helicopter and firing, and would not get off the helicopter and get medical attention until everyone else was in. And these guys go through a lot of training, but just the mentality and courage of that shows a lot of what these guys have to endure to make it to that high of a level. So mission time, 16:35. This is when the convoy makes a wrong turn to begin their long wrong turn roads, or long wrong turn route. So as you see in this picture here, number 5, Super 64 hit gearbox and lands about 1 mile away from the closest Ranger Delta squad. So, and then, it says down bottom right, upon reaching Super 61, 90 Rangers found themselves under siege, heavy militia fire. Despite air support, Rangers were effectively trapped for a night. Second crash site, 2 Delta Force snipers were inserted by helicopter to protect the wounded pilot from approaching small mob,
which I'm sure you've seen that if you've watched the movie or read the book.
So here we see Chalk 1, Chalk 2,
Chalk 3. Chalk 4 missed it by
about a block during searching because it's such a washout. The convoy was to come in. Delta's here into the target building. Convoy picks them up, takes off. If we look down here towards the area detail, Pakistani Stadium, first Black Hawk crash of 6-1 and then the second Black Hawk of 6-2. Now in the movie it shows the first crash, I believe, to be kind of in a large area. It looked like maybe the K4 circle. That was really not the case. It wasn't in a large area where they could just run in and take fire. When it spun, it landed in an alley. The tail hit a wall that was not reinforced and basically blew the wall apart. And piece of helicopter flying. Unfortunately, the cockpit hit a reinforced wall, which crushed it, and that's why that killed both pilot and co-pilot, and they were not able to get Walcott out of that because he was trapped in there. When the Seashore came to try to extract him, they didn't have anything to extract with. They had no. They usually took like a K12 partner saw or a quickie saw. They didn't have that loaded because it was too big and bulky back at the time. It's basically a construction saw for cutting steel, concrete, anything like that. They didn't take it because they weren't going to be that long, and they didn't need it because of wanting to take medical supplies and people. So they said there's no room for it. Seasar, when they were trapped down there, they started ripping panels of Kevlar off the helicopter and trying to reinforce the walls with it as they're waiting for help, tending wounded. So 1635, that's when the convoy made a wrong turn. 1640, that's when Super 6-4 goes down. They see it from above in the little birds. Super 6-4 is down, got hit, spinning out of control. And this is when you see the two Delta snipers. Yeah, Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon. They're providing air cover, and they asked to be let down on the ground to support and defend the crash site and find survivors. General Garrison asked them to repeat what they said clearly, and they do, and he says, "You know what you're asking for?" And they say yes. They knew they were going in. They knew they might not be coming back out. Here's a picture of the American assault. Again, you can see how everyone came in. Convoy route was to take past the Olympic Hotel to the target building, exfil out, and then here's when they start taking wrong turns and decide they need to go to crash site. They actually drove by the crash site without knowing they were by the crash site until they finally got en route. Here's one of the down Blackhawks. I believe this was 6-4, judging by the location of it. When 6-4 went down, there's a lot of tin shacks and walls. So you can see Olympic Hotel, target building, and 6-1's crash site. Now there's some discrepancy. If you look at 6-1's crash site, it is in the alleyway here. There's some discrepancy. It could have been around this area also. Depends. I've read a few articles and documentaries, and a couple people place it at different areas, but it's right around here. Somalis moved in. This was on their technicals. Now, if you saw the movie, they had a bunch of technicals. There were very few technicals that the Task Force Ranger saw, because Adid knew that helicopters were just going to destroy these technicals, and he's not going to want to lose a motorized force when he could just basically use expendable Somalians to go in and get dropped off, and then technical will just get out of there. So as they're fighting down the street, this is really the only on battlefield combat photo that was taken. You can see Rangers stacked up on the walls, and you can't really see a whole lot going on, but that is basically what they're fighting down a street like that. So to make it even worse, we get back one nice sunny day about 3-4 o'clock. Well, going back to the food for drugs, they a lot of the youth and militia would chew on a drug they called cot, and it gave you euphoric effects, kind of a methamphetamine feel, like cocaine, or even like maybe some PCP or meth. Gave you a heightened sense of woo, let's do this. Like Ric Flair in the early '90s. Like that style of energy. But it also gave him the willingness to fight, to get out there, and probably not feel a lot of pain. Well, usually they would start between noon and 2, and noon, 2, 3, the effects would be starting to kick in uh, at their peak. So that's getting them all fired up, because when there's a war and there's gunfire, Somalians are there. They don't care what it's for, they're there. Also, there's nothing else really to do in Somalia because 1 out of 10 are unemployed. Very little business except for maybe some markets. Uh, Not a lot of businesses there. There was a college, there was an airport, but 1 out of 10 unemployment rate is not too good. I'm going the wrong way here. Okay.
Sergeant John Bellman. I had pleasure of talking to this guy, doing an event with him and doing an interview with him. He was on the CSAR.
One of the guys that fast ripped in, he's the one who set up Secure on the South after establishing the CCP. Okay, Super 6-4 goes down. There's Michael Durant, his co-pilot. Super 6-4 going down might have been, I don't want to say the more significant, because it definitely wasn't, but maybe the more portrayed or the more known about, due to Michael Durant's capture. And the 2 Delta snipers who went down to secure the crash site. So, target building, you see the approximate area of Durant's crash site. A lot of little, you can see kind of off to the right, a lot of little tin shacks and shanties. So, when the 2 snipers, Sugar and Gordon, decide to drop in, they were out of fast ropes because the ropes had already been deployed and cut. So they had to land as close as they could and jump down about 5 feet off. When they hit the ground, they didn't know where to go. They looked at the pilot because it was brown out. So the pilot pointed and they ran that way. Firepower they had was a modified M14, Car 15, and a service pistol. When they finally made their way there, they found Michael Durant. They pulled him, leaned him against a tree. His wounds he suffered were, at the time, a broken back and a fractured leg. They pulled him there. He had his MP5 with him. And by that time, the rest of the crew chiefs and who was on aboard, co-pilots, crew chiefs, they either died in the crash or died shortly after by a Somali mob. The 2 Delta snipers held off as long as they could, and Michael Durant recounted that he did not know which one went down first, but he heard I got hit, and one of them came back, gave him his Car 15 rifle, and said, "Shoot anything you see," and went back out, and shortly after, he was down, Durant was firing with his MP5, but it kept jamming up, and he'd have to keep ejecting live rounds out of it. HK usually pretty reliable gun, but he said his might have been failure due to improper weapon maintenance, because when you're a pilot, you're not expecting to have to use it. Back up to Super 6-1 crash, the first crash. There was a little bird that landed to get some of the survivors out. The co-pilot jumped out to help, and there was the pilot firing an MP5 out of the window. So, the MP5 does work. Any weapon you have, even now in your personal life, you own weapons, make sure they're cleaned. Hopefully you don't have to use them if you're a civilian. So here's a overhead aerial view taken a couple months or so, or less than a month later. This was Durant's crash. It's hard to see, but I believe he was leaning against one of these trees over here, kind of toward the center of the photo. Now, as he was leaning there, trying to fight off the Somalis, watching the snipers fight him off, you had Sergeant First Class, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart. These guys were fighting off hundreds of Somalis. When they got overrun, Durant was there. They started beating him. They hit him, and once again, the brutality of the Somalis, hit him over the head with what he thinks was one of his comrades' arms. So one of the soldiers, they ripped him apart, and they were beating him with his arm. He suffered a broken nose, a broken cheekbone, a broken eye socket, on top of his broken leg and broken back. They were beating on him, He said before they got there, he sat down, put his rifle across his chest, crossed his hands on it, and thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I believe I have a video up next from National Geographic that a couple minutes of Durant talking about it. There's a picture of his capture. We'll come back to that. And here's a video.
I was surrounded so closely that I could see nothing other than these angry faces. They were completely out of control. They were doing things that I just had never seen humans do. They beat me across the face with a large, heavy, soft object. And I'm relatively certain it was the arm of one of my comrades. The pain was so extreme, I believed that I was going to die. I have this distinct memory of leaving my body. I mean, I remember looking down on myself, thinking, I don't feel the pain anymore. And suddenly I'm back, realizing that I wish I was dreaming again, because this is as bad as it gets.
So there's clips from the movie in there. The reenactment. This is Durant after he was captured. When they captured him, after they beat him, they would have continued until Someone walked in, fired a gun in the air. In the movie, they say, this guy's claimed for a deed. Possibly, but at first, it's believed it might have been Otto's son who wanted to try to barter his dad for a live American. So they threw him on a flatbed truck with a blanket over him, sat on top of him as they moved. This further broke his leg, so now it was a compound fracture as the bone was sticking through the skin. Immense amounts of pain. The birds above lost him in the maw, but he's being pulled through. They took him to a safe house. When they threw him in a dark room, Somali poked a AK barrel in there, fired one round, and it hit him in the shoulder. So just add more injury. They did make a video. It's a pretty famous thing. It was on cover, I believe, Time, CNN, everywhere, of him as a captor. The video that they made that was broadcast, you can see if you watch the video, he's in a lot of pain, leaning up against the wall. You can kind of see a lot of pain from the back, the leg. You can see his face where they beat him. So they ended up. It ended up that a rival tribe had him, and they traded him to a deed. A deed figured it would be a good bargaining tool. Once he got traded to a deed, he actually did get better treatment, and one of Deed's staff actually took him to a house, treated him, and they actually kind of became friends. They gave him a Bible. Red Cross came actually and gave him a Bible and treated him, make sure he was okay, but they weren't, due to law, their laws and regulations, they weren't allowed to say anything when they were questioned by Delta where he was, due to their having to take a neutral stance, being a neutral group. With the Bible we had, he would make notes in it that didn't make sense to his captors, but would make sense if anyone saw it. In the letters he wrote some cryptic things that only Night Stalkers will understand or the Ranger will understand. Let him know that he's okay. So 11 days he was in captivity, but now we go back. There's a lot of stuff happening at once here. So now we go back at 1654. The Humvee convoy abandons the Super 6-1 and what they call the Lost Convoy. The Lost Convoy, they try to fight their way back to base. Half his force wounded or dead. 1703, the QRF, Quick Reaction Force Convoy, is dispatched from command and control, trying to rescue men at Durant's crash site, which encounters immediate obstacles, resistance, gunfire. QRF and Lost Convoy at 1734 decide they need to return to base. Both convoys, heavy casualties, vehicles, men. They're getting back to base. They need to resupply. They need to clean out the blood. They need to get the wounded and the dead out. At 1740, this is now when Durant was overran after the snipers ran out of ammunition. Every member of the crew, except for Durant's dead, he's carried off, like I said, by the militia. And back to 1745, convoys make it back to base. 99 men are trapped still in the city. And mostly all around the first down Black Hawk. They need medical, they need ammo, they need water. It's just a bad situation for anybody in that who's been fighting in this heat. They're suffering dehydration, exhaustion, and it's only been a few hours. They have many more hours to go. So, Super 66, Black Hawk Super 66, at 1908 sends a supply run to drop water, ammo, medical supplies. However, it's badly damaged. It drops the water and the ammo. They're digging ammo out of the sand. They're picking up water bottles that are shattered. In the movie, if you had seen Corporal Smith, the Delta medic was working on him. His femoral artery was severed when he was hitting the leg. If you've seen the movie, he's reaching in, trying to clamp it, bleeding heavily. They're giving him the last IVs they have, opening the wound up further, so he's trying to reach his hand in and hold it, stop the bleeding. They need to evacuate him. Unfortunately, at 2027, Ranger Corporal Jamie Smith dies of his injuries. At 2100, Joint Task Force Command decides they need assistance from other commands. This is where the 10th Mountain Division comes in. The Pakistani tanks and Malaysian armored vehicles. They're formed, and this is taking time to put together a multinational task force where some of the people don't speak the same language as the other people. The Malaysians agreed that they would let them use their vehicles, and the U.S. said, we want your vehicles, keep your soldiers out of it, we'll take it, but
They said their drivers and how our soldiers were going. Pakistanis had tanks. As they rolled in, they figured, we got some firepower with
this, but there's all light armor vehicles. So nothing really substantial. So it took a few hours, and at 23:23, the convoy finally moves out. But as soon as they reach, not even before they get to the crash site, RPG hits, destroys the first Malaysian vehicle, and wondering where all those RPGs come from. So, yeah, that was always a question I had, and I'm sure others had, but I mean, I guess when you're a militia dealing with the Soviets and trading, money and food, you have a stockpile of RPGs. So, as they're moving out, they're getting hit. They're taking, even heavier fire, more damage. The K4 Circle, 10th Mountain Division gets there, meets up with the Rangers, and it's just an ambush. So, in the meantime, these next images might be graphic. I will warn you. With the Somalis, I will skip through them right now and come back to them as the aftermath. So, as the convoy is moving out, one of the 5 tons is hit with an RPG, and it's destroyed. The driver in it is killed, and it basically just burnt. They let it go. They burned it. Now, all these convoys, as they're going, their tires are blowing out. They're very light-skinned, so RPGs hit it. It's going down. AK rounds going right through it. Luckily, there's no IEDs or landmines they ran into. If they were, they missed them. But these convoys, they're going through roadblocks, and as I said before, the roadblocks weren't just like a couple traffic cones. There's like a 4-foot roadblock. The Rangers, if they're driving, they're not experienced with vehicle. They're a light infantry fighting force. They're not experienced with vehicles. Luckily, they had a couple of the SEALs and Delta with them on it, and they were able to tell the Rangers how to engage, 4-wheel drive, gun it, and get over or through obstacles. Jason Moore said he was in one of the convoys, and they had lit fire. The Somalis lit a fire in the street through the alley. Now they're riding on basically flat tires, but the Humvees have they have a special feature where you can drive on flat tires mostly. Some of the other vehicles have that too, but they're driving basically flat tires, shot up, and Jason Moore told me that if it wasn't for a SEAL driver driving his Humvee, they probably wouldn't have made it because there's a wall of fire. He said this SEAL gunner gunned it, drove right through it, and he said you just felt like you felt like you were in hell. All you could see when you're looking out was just flames, and you can just feel the heat. And when they came out, there's part of the vehicles on fire. Then that eventually went out. But he said if it wasn't for that SEAL driver, just go balls to the wall, gun it, they probably wouldn't have made it. So I mean, they're beating these vehicles. These vehicles are made for that, but not made for you know taking fire and doing everything you're doing. This will come in later of you know the need for vehicles in a combat zone. So the Pakistanis came in. They brought some 5-ton trucks, some troops, some tanks. The Malaysians came in their bright white UN vehicles. So driving through the city at night in bright white vehicles makes you what? A pretty big target. So they got bright headlights, they got bright vehicles, and the first vehicle takes an RPG. Gets destroyed, kills a Malaysian private. These convoys were supposed to link up with the convoys, have them jump in, and then get the hell out of there. So, at midnight, Rangers still trapped, and they're missing things such as night vision goggles because they had taken the power down. The little birds were flying. They might have hit it, but somebody hit the power, main power. And the power lines aren't like you see in your town or any town in the United States. There's no real power grid structure. There's basically just this wire goes from here, this wire goes to there, this wire runs low, and that made it so the birds really couldn't land because they're just wires just ran over all haphazard, and however they could be connected, they're connected. Definitely didn't fit with the OSHA codes. So, night vision goggles. Some of the Delta had them. Some Rangers had them, and they were all pretty much back at base. They did end up recovering a pair from Super 6-1 crash site. One that men went in, recovered a pair of night vision goggles, and they gave it to the saw gunner who was watching one side of the building. So they let him use it. Back then, night goggles aren't cool. Aren't the cool ones like you see, in the movies nowadays. They're not the flip down one. You flip up, flip down. They're big, bulky, hung around your neck monocles that weren't the best, but better than nothing. So now at 1:55 a.m., the convoy finally reaches the trapped Rangers. Part of it makes part of the convoy goes to Durant's crash site. Looking for survivors.
All they find is down Blackhawk. Durant's not there. His crew's missing. No one's around. They look for. They kind of do a quick scan.
Look for survivors. Dismount. Go for it at 3 a.m. Now it's getting close to 12 hours. They're not leaving because they're still struggling to remove the body of Walcott in the Super 6-1 crash site. When the convoy and reinforcements came in, they did bring a saw that they were able to use to start cutting, extracting, but it still was not a quick extraction still. Now they've been fighting all day, all night to secure this, to get the pilot out because they knew what the Somalis did to the bodies. they knew what they would do if they didn't recover him. So after the convoys finally make it, and they're getting people loaded up, uh, they're going to have to move to the stadium, the soccer stadium. The Pakistanis are setting up base. Pakistanis, Malaysians. So as they uh, as they start moving, people are they're jumping on the vehicles, jumping on the Humvees, or running to get on them because the convoy's there, and they're thinking armor's going to be safe. Well, there's not enough room. They're actually putting the dead on top of these white vehicles, you see, and there's just blood running down the vehicles of these white vehicles. They're putting the dead up there. They're trying to get the wounded and alive in the vehicle. Anyone who alive that had enough fight and enough energy left in them after dehydration, exhaustion, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, stress. If they can't get on, they're running next to it. So at 5:30, they start moving. The body's finally recovered. The vehicle's rolling out, and um, on National Street to the rendezvous point where the cars are going to move from there to the stadium. Now, in the movie, what they call the Mogadishu Mile, the movie glorifies it a bit. Again, Hollywood, because it wasn't a mile. Um, you know, and it wasn't a run. Like, they weren't running because you're fighting all night. You're out there. You got like I said, exhaustion, wounds. Carrying all your gear. You're not going to be running, a mile for with any speed. So they walked out. They went as fast as they could to move out, but by 6:30, the force returned to the stadium. At that time, there was 13 confirmed dead, 73 injured, and 6 MIA. Later on, the death toll ended at 18 dead and 1 taken prisoner, which was Michael Durant. When they got back to the stadium, they had different sections. They had the body bags of the deceased, critically wounded, minor wounded, and then everyone else is still alive. And it kind of hit a lot of them right then. It kind of hit them that, hey, we made it, and where's private, where's sergeant, and then that's when they started to find out that their friends didn't make it, and this led to kind of bear a lot of people's minds, the survivor guilt of why did I make it, and he didn't, and even the wounded. I believe after talking to some of these that everyone came back from that battle wounded. If it wasn't physical, it's a mental wound, that you can't see. But I believe from talking to people that that's what they have said, that everyone's come back from that battle wounded in one way or another. A lot of these Rangers did go on to serve longer and become into more battles. Schugert ended up transferring from the infantry to, I'm sorry, not Strucker. Sorry, not Schugert. Strucker ended up transferring to chaplain program. He's a minister now. Other people, have their own companies, do their own training, motivational speeches. And when you look at them, you think they're fine, but and maybe they might be, but from what I've talked to a few of them, that it plays hell on you. And this battle was pretty much like the bloodiest and most intense battle since Vietnam for the U.S. Now the next day, they started next day as they're collecting all their thoughts and everything, and they're sending patrols back out for Mike Durant, and you know, and they're still taking fire, but not quite as much. Now, here's the graphic photos. This is what the Somalis do, and this is what you saw on CNN. You saw bodies of Americans kicked, drugged through, desecrated, and here's what I said: the women were the vicious ones with the bodies. And you can see that they did not treat the bodies of any captives well. So here's pictures of the helicopter left there, the Somalis, that they're not going to get the helicopters out pretty much. So there's Somalis celebrating their small little victories on downing American helicopters, which were the might of America, a show of strength that we have these MH-60 little birds, and MH-6A6 little birds, and then we have the Blackhawks, the MH-60 Blackhawks. That's a show of American strength.
Blackhawks, and the sword of 160th, the best pilots in the world of flying these. So these Somalis are kind of like
proud, and this kind of gave a lot of terrorist groups a thing to hey, we're gonna give a big middle finger to the United States. We know we can take you down now. Al Qaeda, they were kind of happy and relishing in a Somali victory, and this may have been the first time the United States dealt with Al Qaeda and Bin Laden. There was rumors that Al Qaeda helped train the Somalis, helped arm them, and they might have been some Al Qaeda fighters there. It's not confirmed totally, but this is a belief of some that this may have been the first time that we encounter any Al Qaeda training or fighting. Some other parts. If you see, I didn't go into a lot of names because there are 160 names. I'd be here for 12 hours trying to get through everybody's story, everyone's name. There are a lot of books, documentaries. Lee Neville wrote one. This very, very informative, very meticulous, I guess, writing. John Bellman told me about when it came out, and I ended up buying it, and I've went through it twice already. Day of the Rangers, the Battle of Mogadishu, 25 years on. There's also Mark Bowden's famous book, Black Hawk Down, which brought the battle out to the public, and the movie. There's many, many other books. Those are just two of the ones I referenced and read. There's a PBS documentary, Frontline documentary. If you want to know more, that's has some interviews with some of the Rangers. It's a pretty good show. One thing that gets left out of the movie and some of the books is the 10th Mountain Division and their importance in making sure that no more Rangers, more Delta weren't killed or injured. They kind of get forgotten. There's a movie that came out with 10th Mountain Division, or they made it. I'd recommend that movie. There's documentaries out there. There's interviews with and speeches by Kenny Thomas. He did a lot of speeches. Michael Durant, he retells his story. There's a lot of information out there if you're interested. For time, if you want, send me a message and I'll link you to any of that stuff. But for time, I'm not going to go into all those movies and documentaries and books. And unfortunately, I'm not going to name every Ranger, every Delta, every 10th Mountain, every Special Force, every SEAL that's in there. Because like I said, it would take too long. A couple more things, though, in the book versus movie versus real life. In the movie, they show in the movie they show, well, in the movie they take a lot of people and combine them into one person. Because when you're watching a movie, a 2 hour movie, you're not going to learn 160 people and everybody's story. So they would combine them into one. And when the movie came out, the Rangers went together and watched it. And when they watched it, um, pretty much everyone walked out silent. Like that's pretty much how accurate a Hollywood movie was to that, to what they went through. So as they combine, they combine people when you only got a few, real, people in there. I mean, they got real names, but they combine them together, so you don't have to learn 160. You learn 20 that they combined into them. In the beginning, there's Delta operator, kind of staking out the city, looking around at the Bakara market. Funny thing is the Oakley glasses you had didn't come out until 1999, and it took place in 93. On the Black Hawk, when they're 1 minute out, you see one of the Rangers reading John Grisham, The Client. The book didn't come out until 1994. As I mentioned before, the crash site was not in a wide open area. The technicals that came in at night, like I said, ID was not going to throw technicals at the force because the little birds also all night, all day, all night, little birds flew gun runs the whole way around the city. Or, well, not the whole way around the city, but in the main fighting area, they would circle that area and they would run gun runs. Overnight, there's a 5-man crew resupplying rockets, rounds of ammo, and fuel to the little birds all night long. 5-man ground crew at the airport. Back to the movie fact versus fiction. I think there was actually 5. There weren't 2. There was actually 5 Blackhawks that were downed. 2 crashed in the city, and the other either made it back to base or crashed near enough to the base that they were out of harm's way for the most part. The technicals didn't roll in like the movie showed. Movie glorified a lot of the things. But the one part where the one ranger walks out and slips, and there's a Somali son and his dad, and the Somali son starts shooting and ends up shooting his dad because the ranger slipped and fell. Didn't happen, but showed the horrors of war. Showed, how, just the anger and, the brutality that could happen. Some other facts here I've probably skimmed over. The convoy in the movie, when it did make it back to the base, and they said clean the blood out and resupply,
that actually did happen. Now, that had to be hard for whoever made it back with Strucker and them not only taking
your fellow Rangers who had died and removing their body, but washing out the blood and the pieces of, skin and muscle and brain out of the vehicle of your friends. And that has to, like I said, that had to be hard, but, these guys, they're trained just to, they have to shrug it off. They have to get back out there before more of their friends die. When the guy in the movie said, I can't go back out there, and Stricker said, I'm not going to ask you to go back out there, but, I need you out there. And, and that actually did, that actually did happen, that part. And, it wasn't like that guy was a coward. He's scared. I mean, you talk to anybody out there reading the accounts, and they were, everyone out there was pretty much scared to get out there because, hell, you got hundreds, thousands of Somalis firing at you. And, you're a tenth of, what they are, 11 days later, they negotiate, and Michael Durant is released. Here's him giving a thumbs up as he's being taken back, put on a plane to head to get medical attention. He did make his full recovery, and like I said, he has some speeches, interviews. Seems to be, that incident kind of shaped his views, and you know how he feels about life, and he thought he was going to die. I mean, that's pretty tough realization to have to cope with, at that time, and then you come out of it. Um, a lot of these guys, that are going to die, and they will tell you they prayed. A lot of them prayed, and a lot of them came out of it untouched. You know, 11 days in captivity. Durant got released, and they bring him home. Um, General Garrison addressing Task Force Ranger. This was after the battle, the remembrance service. You can see the boots with the guns of the fallen. President Clinton giving the widow, Carmen, Gary Gordon's widow, giving the Medal of Honor, which is posthumously given to him and Sugar. Sister Clinton giving her his Medal of Honor. This is an actual piece of the rotor from 6-1. So this is the actual rotor that came from Super 6-1. They actually recovered that one. Mogadishu. This is down the street where two warring clans were. This is down the street where the Rangers fought. The burnout car in the middle was from the clans fighting. There is some vegetation growing now, and I think these clans have made peace. But this is what the streets look like. The Rangers are fighting down. That the convoys are trying to go down. This was a main street. You can see how it looks a lot better than just a alleyway. Somalia now has a little bit of government, prime minister, president. They're still receiving help from United Nations for food. Marines had been back there. Armed forces have been back there to help distribute more food and humanitarian efforts. Lynn Fairlane, shout out to her, who's going to be the newest member of TG, who helped me make this slideshow. Talked to her friend today who's in Marines, and he basically was there in 97, I believe, to help the humanitarian effort. And before I get to him and John Bellman's statement and other statements, those are two I've heard personally of what they thought of Somalia. This battle shaped the U.S. Battle from this point to modern day, from 93 to 2020. This really shaped the battle. Secretary of Defense Les Asner, he resigned shortly after this. Washington politics came into play, looking for a scapegoat. He resigned. They couldn't figure out why they didn't have AC-130s and why they were scrubbed from the package. He said they were never in the package. Others said they were in every package. The closest one was 2 hours out, but most of the Rangers in Delta do believe they had AC-130s providing support, that mission this day would have went a lot better for them. It changed the battle completely. Now, pretty much every battle from this point on, AC-130s were included in the package. Vehicles. The Rangers light infantry force, not used to the vehicle combat. Delta, too cool for vehicles. After this, they decided hey, we need some armored vehicles. That's where the Striker came about for Delta Force, which argued for years, a few years internally, of do we need vehicles or not. The Striker came about out of this. The armored Humvees, the better weapons better weapons and technology in the vehicles. Now, some of the people said, and it's kind of true, that if you have an armored vehicle, you play a little less safe. You think the armor is going to protect you, you get a little more brave, and that's not there. The armor is there to help you, not completely protect you. As far as urban combat goes, Delta was
pretty well versed in it. And the Rangers, 10th Mountain, a lot of other places weren't as skilled and trained in
urban combat, which led to a lot more of the urban combat training, the mount. The use of Little Birds as a sniping platform. Some of the Delta snipers were on Little Birds sniping off the bench. That changed. They decided, why should I sit up here and take one shot from a helicopter? You should have, M60s up here. Drop me off on a roof. I'll snipe from there. Makes a lot more sense when you're firing one shot from a helicopter, which has to hover for a brief moment to steady get that shot. You're a big target. Even though they said, big sky, little target, and a lot of RPGs did go off. It was a big sky, little target. But in that big sky, little target, when it connected with that little target, well, you see the 2 went down in the city and 3 others went down also. And before that, one had, gone down in September from 10th Mountain. So they changed that. From now on, Blackhawks not really into the city. AH and MH Little Birds are the ones that they prefer to go into the city, exfil, and then fly up for a holding pattern. Let's see, what other little facts do we have here from the Rangers? The Malaysians, APCs helped. If you talk to us and read some accounts, they were not happy with the Pakistanis. Pakistanis had some old Cold War era tanks, and they stopped. They fought some, but they pretty much stopped and turned around, so they would not lose any of their tanks or their men. And the U.S. was not happy about that. The Malaysians went in, and thankful to the Malaysians. I mean, the Pakistanis also for some support, but definite big thanks to Malaysians who might be forgotten. 10th Mountain Division, who doesn't get the credit they need. Rangers and Delta, of course, are the ones portrayed mostly. They're the ones doing it, getting into the thick of things. So everything after this has changed. How everyone feels, how war goes, how it's fought, and there was one more American casualty on October 6th. Meanwhile, back at base, as I said before, they mortared the base. Well, one of the mortars landed, injuring over a dozen and killing Ryerson, who is a squad leader for Delta. So that brought it to 19, 18 that one day, 19 3 days later. In March 94, Clinton ordered everyone out of Somalia. And then in 1995, Aidid, riding high on power, gets shot and suffers and dies of a heart attack as a result of being shot. The same day he died, General Garrison resigned. And when he talks about it, he gives a little wink that he resigned the same day that Adid died. Now, as far as personally talking to some of the Rangers and one of the Marines was there years later, when he got to Somalia, it was a humanitarian effort in a place that we didn't need to be there and lose men, lose vehicles, and have the media blow it all over the air of the bodies being dragged through the streets and the horrors of war. And the resounding idea, I think Mr. John Bellman brought it up perfect when he said Somalia was a shithole when we got there and a shithole when we left. We should have never been there. So there's a lot of other little things in there. So if anybody has any questions, you can message me. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every little detail and everything, but before I conclude, I will read down through the soldiers who were killed. Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart, Staff Sergeant Daniel Bush, Sergeant First Class Earl Fillmore, Master Sergeant Timothy Martin, Sergeant First Class Matthew Ryerson, Corporal James Smith, Specialist James Cavaco, Sergeant James Casey Joyce, Corporal Richard Koluski, Sergeant Dominic Pilla, Sergeant Lorenzo Ruiz, Staff Sergeant, those were soldiers of the 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and before that was the Delta. Pilots and crew of 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, Staff Sergeant William Cleveland, Staff Sergeant Thomas Field, Chief Foreign Officer Raymond Frank, Chief Foreign Officer Clifton Walcott, Chief Foreign Officer Donovan Briley, soldier of 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, Sergeant Cornell Houston, PFC James Martin.
The Somali death count was anywhere from 200 and up. There's no
actual numbers. The U.S. death count we've seen, and that is it's a shame that many people lost their lives, but it's amazing a lot more didn't. Due to the professionalism of the young men and the seasoned veterans that were there, they saved probably at least 100 lives. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you can message me. My email is ssj3eric1@hotmail.com. ssj3eric1@hotmail.com. If you're in TG, you can find me on Discord or the forums. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope everyone's got some kind of information, learned something. If there's something you think I've missed, I probably did. Like I said, there's so much information of a 12-hour book and probably 15 hours of documentaries and movies I watched. Or if you have any interesting facts, send me a message. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Have a good day. On its 27th anniversary of the battle. Not going to say have happy anniversary, because it's definitely not. But I figured I would like to bring this to light to more people, get it out to the public, get out to G of anyone who was interested in it. And all credits go to all my sources, whether they books, movies, CNN, PBS, Lee Neville, Mark Bowden, photos from Jerry Izzo, speaking to John Bellman, speaking to Jason Moore. So, everyone, hope you enjoy your day, and I look forward to doing more of this. Thank you for showing up, and this is Crojack signing out.